Megan, Michelle, and I would like to welcome you to our presentation. The presentation we have for you here centers around the cultural worldview of individuals of the Asian descent. And in this PowerPoint, we will first identify and delineate the cultural worldview of the group. Then we will highlight the key cultural considerations that may conflict with the dominant American worldview. And we will also describe how the potential worldview and cultural conflicts may impact the counseling process. So let's begin. To start, I want to briefly remind ourselves that Asia is huge. There are 48 countries in Asia, and it is the largest continent in the world that covers approximately 30% of the Earth's land. In fact, Asia makes up about 60% of the world's population, and that is a lot of people. But in research, our samples separates these Asians into subcategories like Central Asians, East Asians, Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders. There are also Southeast Asians, South Asians, as well as West Asians, which are also known as Middle East Asians. So looking at the map, like where do we draw the line? So as you can see, there is no official definition of the boundaries between Asia and Europe. Some of the countries listed as Asian might not seem obvious. Let's take Russia, for example. Russians are generally considered Europeans. But why? Is it because of their religion, their skin color, their practice? So this suggests to us that there is no single factor to describe an ethnic identity or origin. The notations of ethnic and national identity carry a political, social, and as well as familial meanings. So, what did I mean when I said one's ethnic and national identity carries a political, social, and familial meaning? And this kind of starts with the social identity theory. So what that theory is in general, it aims to specify and predict the circumstances under which individuals think of themselves as an individual or as a group member. So what are those circumstances? In research, those circumstances are the consequence of microaggressions towards one's racial and ethnic group. In other words, that kind of suggests that the initial group affiliation is important because it serves as the psychological needs related to the development of the self-concept. And that is why I said the cultural worldview encompasses all three factors: the individual, social, structural, and institutional. The individual factors are the personal motivation, incentives, attitudes, perceptions, psychological factors in response to the societal and structural factors that gives us a sense of agency, belonging, and identity. The social factors are the relationships that we have with our families, peers, and communities that influences our cultural values and beliefs, and this can happen at a local or national level. Structural and institutional factors are the causes of conflicts and sources of resilience embedded within the social, cultural, and even political systems. So, how does it all tie together in relation to individuals of an Asian descent? The cultural worldview of people of the Asian descent was built from the stereotypes developed around Asian familial expectations and societal cultural norms. An example of this comes from a 2018 study that investigated the stereotype commonly associated with Asian Americans. Asian Americans are often stereotyped as the model minority due to their distinctively high educational and occupational attainments. This social factor leads to an internalization of certain expectations of their own vocational development. In other words, Asian Americans may experience a restricted sense of vocational identity. The study proposed that Asian Americans do not engage in career exploration because their family and cultural values impose an expectation to pursue a technical or scientific career. And Asian Americans have this drive for prestige and a higher social class, and this could also be an avenue for individuals to bring honor to their family rather than shame through their education and their career success. In the next couple of slides, Michelle will discuss more cultural differences in relationship to the mainstream culture. And then Megan will teach us how counselors can be more aware of these cultural differences during their practices and address some problems or address some difficulties of feeling inadequate when Asian Americans do not achieve the type of success to meet their cultural worldview of themselves.
Clashes between Asian cultures and Western cultures have varied throughout the years, as times and technology have continued to evolve. That being said, Asian countries such as Korea have used a more collectivistic approach in how individuals carry morals, values, and emotions. The study by NAM is just one of many studies that focus on how different sections of the world also carry different societies or different society types. In the West, North Americans focus more on individuality and self expression, whereas in other areas, connectedness with society is more emphasized. Through therapy groups and counseling, individuals in the Western Hemisphere are taught how to effectively utilize their individuality, which, when displayed, is seen as a sign of strength and courage because the individual is able to break away from a common social norm. Other sections of the world, such as in Asian countries, individuals are seen as positively moral, with high values when they connect with their society. Another difference between Western cultures and East Asian cultures is moral reasoning. Western cultures such as US and Canada seek and view moral reasoning through individuality, whereas in East Asian cultures, an individual who has higher morals is seen as a socially connected individual. This ties in to the idea of having an interdependent society versus an independent society, which will be discussed further in the following slides. Studies such as the one by Wang and Kim are a reflection of how different cultures approach health services. In East Asian countries, there is an emphasis on herbal, spiritual, and social healing, whereas in American culture, counseling sessions and the process itself is rigorous, going through a step by step process including a referral, interview, intake session, counseling, and closing sessions, then a few months later, a follow up. The steps very much focus on the individual and their experiences and needs, whereas in East Asian countries, healing can be met through social bonding, connectedness, spirituality, and more natural options such as herbs. Another difference between how counseling sessions differentiate between one another in two separate parts of the world is that in some societies there is a stigma against those who suffer from mental health challenges or for those who plan to seek help. In East Asian countries, individuals, especially men, are introverted in their well being. The fear of getting help from counseling may be seen as a weakness by their society. This is important because of the dependence and connection built between the individual and society in the East. In North America, the opposite occurs. Mental health services are highly advocated, bringing light against the stigma that has been attached to seeking help. Light is brought by individuals within society, reducing the stigma by sharing their personal journeys, explaining the benefits, and also acknowledging the positive results achieved by studies throughout the years. Two of these studies are from Hajlo and Clement. Both of these studies discuss the positive effects that occur post therapy and counseling. They also discuss the stigma found within Asian countries in terms of seeking help. The article by Clement discusses how Asian, African, and military based individuals were rated amongst the highest to have fears of being shamed for seeking help or counseling. The overall study focused on looking at previous studies that have been done on the correlation between seeking help services and how external factors such as culture play a role in an individual's choice of choosing counseling. So, how does an independent society, an interdependent society, an analytic or holistic society tie into multiculturalism, counseling, and the worldview? Social constructs are what highlights the differences that are found within different societies. Even a society of the same subgroups, such as East Asia, with the same values, may still carry separate opinions and morals in terms of counseling. Individuals living in a holistic, dominant society may be more open to analytic activities, such as group counseling, if they were in another part of the world. Regardless of where you are in the world, people will have different views on what is most important in society and how society should function. An independent society versus an interdependent society is defined by the fact that an independent society contains individuals that focus more on their individuality and personal growth, and an interdependent society focuses more on how different cultures are looked at based on others within the same society. An analytic society holds a linear perspective where topics, perceptions, and theories are more concrete. In comparison, a holistic society holds a nonlinear perspective where topics, perceptions, and theories are less concrete and more abstract. Variation can exist between each social construct, and as a result, you cannot reduce cultural differences down to individual differences. Differences can be found within a culture even if that culture has different values than another. Variation exists between individuals in terms of being analytic and holistic.
Hi everyone, my name is Megan and I did the slides on cultural differences and impact on counseling session and process. Some of the pros of cultural differences in the Asian descent were, according to an article by Duan, the development of the counseling profession in these regions started with strong input from the West. So a lot of the counseling techniques that we use here in the United States were um, developed and brought to the Asian descent. That way they could use our theories with strong foundations of Western theories and methods in counseling in Asia. This had an impact on sessions. So, with using our Western techniques, they had a greater sense of therapy, knowing that what we've been doing in the United States has been working. So, they um, used our strong foundations and brought them over and used them in the Asian countries. Due to the lack of counseling in Asia and the theories being integrated being from the West, counseling sessions can be progressive. With the sessions being progressive, they're learning more, they're able to get their therapy and be able to um, really grow in their sessions and be able to have that counselor client um, relationship that they need to have in counseling. On this slide, we talk about the cultural differences and impact on counseling session process, and we're going to talk about the cons of cultural differences in the Asian descent. With every culture, there will always be a barrier of counseling a client that is of a different nationality. So if you have someone that's from an Asian descent, such as Taiwan, Thailand, Indonesia, and then a counselor that comes from, it could be from the United States or it could be from Australia, there's always going to be that barrier of different nationalities in the counseling session. In a study conducted by Duan, participants of the study did recognize that many of the Western theories could be potentially applicable at the conceptual level. However, they were warned that specific tenets and counseling methods derived from the theories needed to be transformed or modified to be useful in their cultures. Um, in the Asian in the Asian communities, they use a lot of our Western techniques and theories, but as this study was conducted, they really realized that because of different nationalities and cultures, that because something is successful in the West doesn't mean that it'll be successful in the East, and that they need to adjust the counseling process and adjust what the methods to tailor to specific cultures. So even though the Western theories are successful here in the United States and in the West, they need to be tailored and adjusted so um, counselors can really work with their clients and be able to know that they will be successful in the culture that they're working in. On this slide, we're going to talk about the development of counseling in Taiwan and Hong Kong and mainland China. The development stages of professional counseling in Taiwan were very similar to those in the United States. Like we talked about in the previous slide, a lot of the Western theories were brought to China and brought to Taiwan and Indonesia, and they were used to work in the counseling process. So as stated here, they were very similar as those in the United States. The counseling and guidance programs in schools started in the 1960s and became widely accepted at levels of public schools and university campuses by the end of the 1980s. This was very different than the United States. Um, they didn't start really implementing counseling and guidance programs in schools until the 1960s, and in the United States, different, we've always had counseling since the early 1900s and before that in schools and in public schools. And similarly, professional counseling was introduced to Hong Kong in the 1960s, returning scholars trained in the West. Although the title of counseling psychologist has not been integrated in the Hong Kong government's occupational structures, trained counseling psychologists have adopted different professional identities to function in mental health fields for several decades. So, for the counseling process and for psychology, they are able to go to the West and be trained and come back and take what they've learned and really implement it into counseling sessions and the process. By learning these things from the West, they're able to take that and really develop the best counseling sessions that they can for their clients, especially in places that haven't developed any type of counseling or implemented it anywhere until the 1960s and until the 1980s. The development of professional counseling in the mainland China took a little different course. It greatly coincided with the political and cultural environment. Psychotherapy was imported from the West to the medical field in China decades ago, but professional psychology counseling did not enter China until the government's open door policy in the late 1970s. So especially in China, they didn't have any type of counseling imported until very recently. So the counseling field and the counseling session and process is really developing still and using the different theories. And until the open door policy, they didn't have professional psychology counseling as an actual profession. So to really implement ideas into the counseling session and process would have been very difficult in China because it was not recognized yet until the late 1970s and very currently. So they're still learning and they're still implementing. So for the counseling process, there is a lot of Western theories that they will be taking and implementing, especially when they go to the West to learn and bring back what they have learned. For the last slide on counseling process and counseling sessions, we're going to talk about the counseling and psychotherapy in Asia Pacific. In the Asia Pacific Journal of Counseling and Psychotherapy, there was research conducted in counseling and psychotherapy related field from Australia, Taiwan, Singapore, Nigeria, New Zealand, and India. They stated that the therapeutic alliance is among the most important factors leading to beneficial results in counseling and psychotherapy. Due to cultural differences, however, there are slight regional variations in the types of relationship quality associated with successful therapeutic outcomes. So like I said in the last slide, in previous slides, the cultural differences is always going to be one of the barriers that's always going to happen in counseling. But as stated in this journal, one of the most important factors is the therapeutic alliance and the relationship quality that you have with your counselor, that you'll have successful therapeutic outcomes. Especially in different cultures and in different countries, it does need to be adjusted and it does need to be tailored to a specific type of culture. But with these as the core factors, it will definitely be successful no matter what country or nationality you are in, as long as you are focusing on this key factor. For successful counseling, positive behavior change occurs not only during but also between counseling sessions. There are numerous potential factors that can prevent the implementation and enhancement of treatment recommendations by clients in their lives outside of the therapy room. So also for successful counseling, you need to have positive behavior change and be able to really want to go to counseling and really want to have that change. So as long as you have your positive behavior change, this is another key factor that can be used to be used in different cultures, and especially in the Asian descent. This is something that can really be a positive factor, especially having positive behavior in counseling and outside of counseling and in between counseling. That way there is successful counseling sessions and the client and the counselor can have a good counseling relationship.